So we can step through the practice now. How many have not done the mandala before? Okay, so half and half. What I'm going to do here at first actually doesn't require you looking at the book. This is more a matter of trying to put something together so that when you look at the book, you might remember some principles to look at it. Because this is definitely probably the most detail-oriented practice you can find until you get kind of way off into the edges of some of the more complex Vajrayana Yudam practices. The good news is that once you have this, it's there in all the Yudam practices, so you can, including Tara. This is for those who are interested in Tara practice. Okay, this is good, because you do it several times in there if you're doing the full practice. We always start right at the beginning and imagining our root teacher present. Requesting blessing and receiving empowerment. Their radiant being, the radiance touches us. And just in an instant, just think, we've received all the empowerments. Turning the mind to the four thoughts. In this case, we can begin by recalling the faults of samsara, and in particular focusing on the sense of incompleteness, the sense of wanting something, sort of a kind of background level of anxiety and desire. Whatever we have, wanting a little bit more. Holding what we have, wanting a little bit more in order to feel okay. Whatever it is. Noticing how this pervades so much of our time in trivial and big ways. Wishing for external circumstances, inner circumstances. In this we can recognize the potency of karmic propensities, the conditions that we set in place that maintains this kind of underlying neediness, wanting, needing. But recognizing that our life presents profound opportunities and that it's brief. And so we go for refuge. And in looking ahead towards that we're going to be doing the mandala, we're going through mandala now. One of the things that we do at the very beginning of mandala practice is to create what's called the drupe, or accomplishment mandala, as opposed to the offering mandala, drupe mandala. And so we create this mandala. I might need a little bit more. Some rice with some... Yes?
Do you mind repeating that word slower?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Drupe. Drupe?
Oh, accomplished.
Okay. Yeah, drupe, accomplishment. And chupe, the offering mandala. And you can find the terminology and the directions in the Torch of Certainty, or Torch of True Meaning. Talks about purifying the base. This is going to be the home for all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the Yidams, all the sources of refuge. They're going to have a home. They will take up permanent residence for the duration of your mandala practice. So you want to put a little energy into this. Om Bhaja Amrita Kundale. So, whatever you do, if you know the mantras for purification, something like that, you can recite them. Otherwise, just make these little piles of rice. And just as with the refuge tree, it's the same arrangement as the refuge tree, except instead of in a tree, it's in a palace. And there are only 5 piles. But here we already are starting to make a mess. But we want this to be a very nice mess. So we attend to it carefully. Lamas, the Lamas, the Buddhas, the Dharma, the Sangha, and the protectors are all around. So we would put this on the shrine. And if I was to make this very nice, I would have the offerings around it. So we would have our usual offerings on the shrine. Yeah, it's the same arrangement as the refuge tree, except it's in a palace.
What are some of the usual offerings? Is it like water?
It's the same as the offering bowls. Argam bhajam pupa dupa. So it's water for drinking. Argam bhajam. That comes down. Yes, bhajam is the water for washing. These are all the offerings that you would offer an important visitor who came a long distance, particularly if they were walking through the heat across the plains of India. Something to drink, first off. Something to kind of clean up, wash the dust, argam bhajam. Then around you would have flowers, this nice, beautiful environment, and some incense, dupe. And lamp offering. And then some scented oils or something like to massage, anointing oils. Navidya. Then you get the jelly beans, the food offering, and some music, shabda. So those are the offerings that are kind of the usual offerings on the shrine, And when we set those up on a daily basis, it's an offering of hospitality to the Buddhas. It's kind of remembering to keep our hearts and our home and our place kind of open to that. And so then we're inviting the Buddhas, and so they've come. And the more that we can actually, this is actually, it's a very challenging piece of practice. But the more that we can abandon our ideas of what the Buddhas are and how we would recognize them, the more we can actually invoke and hold the sense that we actually have all the sources of refuge are present here. It's almost like the rice is the Lama. It's not like the Lama is hidden in there someplace. This is. And this is very much, this is an introduction to a very, kind of a very deep aspect of Vajrayana practice. And it's a koan. You could say it's also a challenging koan. But Lama Michael told told a story of, on retreat where they had to make some big torma. Every year they had to do this practice to make this big torma. And at the beginning, they were just like, well, it's this is giant torma. It's a bunch of dough. And Lama Sangsi says, and they were kind of, clearly it's just like this complicated thing to do, and it's a bunch of, can't we just sit quietly and shut up? That was one of those moments. And Lama Sangsi came and sort of saw that this is kind of where the mental space was. He said, if you cannot see that torma as your Lama, you're not getting the Vajrayana. So it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And this is not like idol worship or something like that. Because here, if you made a statue that was supposed to look like something, you could say, oh, it's supposed to look like the Buddha, and therefore it's something. These are piles of rice. But to relate as though the Buddhas are actually present, it's a challenging thing. And it's something to kind of, you have to look deeper and deeper long term. And the more you can cultivate a relationship with that and look into that and explore how that is, the more interesting and more engaging it becomes. So we have the sources of refuge here. So we can go to refuge, develop bodhicitta, thinking ourselves. So if you mentally recite or just mentally review all the limbs of the refuge prayer, whether it's a short refuge prayer or a longer one, holding all beings together in the presence of the sources of refuge. Allow the sources of refuge to dissolve into you. Allow the mind to rest openly. And if you're doing the mandala practice, you can go directly there, or you can spend a moment with Dorje Sempa. So here we'll just instantly bring to mind the presence of Dorje Sempa, the crown of our head. Offer the aspirations and the wishes to be purified. Ask for the blessings of Dorje Sempa. Recite the mantra a little bit. Just a short mantra, Om Vajrasattva. Allow your whole being to be filled with nectar. Filled with nectar, Dorje Sempa acknowledges we're purified, dissolves into us. Then we turn to mandala offering, again bringing to mind all the sources of refuge present space in front of us. This time not in a tree but in a palace. Here we would take out the mandala plate. We prepare the mandala plate. Purification with the Dorje Sempa mantra. And we've created a pure ground. And this is the idealized universe. One of the first things we have to let go is that we own the true idea of the universe. Here we imagine what the universe would be like in terms of the qualities present, qualities of perfection. So while we're imagining, going through the exercise imagining all the points of the mandala, all the 37 elements that are part of the traditional cosmology. We hold in mind that in our own mind streams, we have some idea of how the universe is, and we have in our mind some idea of what an ideal universe would be. And in this, as we're going through the mandala and making the offerings, there's an overarching challenge. That is, if we had this ideal external circumstance, would we hold on to it or would we let it go? There's a very profound question. An environment that's perfect in all respects, but it's an environment that comes from causes and conditions. But if we did have this perfect environment, would we offer it to enlightenment? Would we let it go? Or would we cling to it? One measure from an ordinary perspective of the depth and profundity of liberation is that even the most idealized environment and circumstance is still bondage in comparison to enlightenment. So while we go through the exercise with offering the mandala, we hold not only whatever aspects of the traditional form in the forefront of our mind that help us understand these things, but we also hold that we are holding the idealized universe, the idealized environment, idealized relationships that we hold in our own mind. Anything that we think, oh, it would be wonderful if, I would be happy if, I will be happy when. The perspective that we have as we offer is though we could see into the entirety of the universe. The traditional form with the 4 continents, Mount Meru in the center, subcontinents, This is our frame of reference is a frame of reference where we can see into the entirety of the universe. And see all the qualities. If you read about the qualities of each element in the mandala, you can find different things that at different times will speak to you, either directly or they'll remind you of something. So we have the 4 continents, we have the environment, the sense of the central mountain and the periphery. In that we have all elements of the universe contained. There's a sense of we can see everything. And then we go through the various profound possibilities for what would be in a wonderful environment. A mountain of riches. It's hard to go through and stop. A grove of trees that produce anything that's needed. And one that's become